Executive Director of the Roosevelt Institute. This is the best place for you to be on a beautiful Saturday morning.
Oh, of course.
We're thrilled that you're here. I know that you're going to have a great discussion. We do have some restrooms around the corner. We also have restrooms upstairs, so you can use the elevator or find your way around the corner. Please make yourself comfortable accessing the muffins and the coffee. But again, it's great to have you here, and we look forward to a great discussion this morning. It's all yours, Will.
Thank you. Well, thank you and welcome. I'm delighted. Well, I don't want to go there. I'm delighted to naked light bulb say the creed. Welcome this morning. We appreciate you being here. April 12th was the 67th anniversary of FDR's death, and to the day, the 57th anniversary of the polio vaccine. There's a tremendous amount of history here at Warm Springs. I hope you will get a chance after our meeting this morning to tour. You can take this elevator up to the 3rd floor and walk directly into the medical complex, which looks like UVA. The chapel is right up on the top of the hill here, about 50 meters up the hill on the left, which is where FDR attended church service the last of his life. He died 3 days later. The Camp Dream is back in the back, which is where we do our camps here at Warm Springs. We had 6 last year with the Georgia Warrior Alliance for wounded warriors and their families, and I'll tell you about that in just a minute. And there are 27 cottages here. There used to be 29, 2 of them just burned down. McCarthy Cottage, where FDR announced on national radio that he was running for president for the first time in McCarthy Cottage here. So there's a tremendous amount of history, and not only with FDR and the Callaways, and the first $1,000 for the 103-bed hospital here came from Fort Benning. And the first patients in 1944 were spinal cord injury patients that FDR had sent here that were injured in World War II. And not their Cason Callaway, all of the money for this complex was raised by Georgians. And Cason was Bo's father, who was the 11th Secretary of the Army, who, if you went to the orchestra last night, you heard Bo, and Edward's grandfather. But they also, as I was telling Jack and Juanita last night, introduced Robert Woodruff to Eisenhower in their home, and encouraged all the Coca-Cola bottlers to swing their delegations for Eisenhower on the first ballot, which resulted in him defeating Howard Taft. So there's just tremendous history here. If you go up to Georgia Hall, you'll see President Kennedy speaking here in front of the little White House, President Clinton, of course, President Carter. In '74, Carter signed a 99-year lease to take over Roosevelt from the Roosevelt Foundation. So the state of Georgia owns and operates, or on a 99-year lease, this property. But welcome this morning. I want to thank Kaiser Permanente for being a sponsor. Thank Piedmont Hospital. Thank our very generous sponsors, who I hope we have listed, Georgia EMC and WC Bradley. I'd like to thank Jack and Juanita Mark Walter for making it possible to host a group of Georgia Tech students who you'll be hearing from this morning. One group of which is lost, but hopefully they'll make it here this morning. At in-state navigation, they're studying engineering. But I want to tell you guys a little bit about the Georgia Warrior Alliance, and then we're going to launch into our panels. We did a survey. This journey with the Georgia Warrior Alliance started 2.5 years ago. Senator Isaacs and I called a meeting with Georgia business, philanthropic, and political leaders to make the commitment that Georgia will be the #1 state in America for programs and services for military men and women and their families. We did a survey of over 4,000 Georgia military families, and we asked them what they wanted and needed. The #1 response was, we want a safe environment to decompress from the stress of combat and re-engage with our family before re-entering society. So we partnered with Callaway Gardens and Warm Springs and FDR State Park, which is about a 22,000-acre campus. And Greg can tell you all about the history, but the 1996 Paralympic Games were here. They have the Roosevelt Cup here with people with disabilities from all over the world. We met here with the representatives from the Israeli Sports Center, who I believe have some of the best rehab and technology in the world, and we hope we'll be able to partner with them. And I want to thank Consul Avron and his wife Talia for being here this morning. Thank you very much. We're delighted to have you here. The Israelis have the best, I think, some of the very most exciting cutting-edge research and technology in the world for people with disabilities. So we did 6 camps here with Scott Rigsby, the first double amputee to do the Ironman, who holds the world record in the Ironman and in the marathon. And we had those camps here, and then met with Admiral Mullen on September 13th of last year. And he said, Ross, the camps are wonderful, but what we really need is a coordinated effort at the state level. We have great civic, community, and corporate support, but we don't have a coordinated effort. We've identified 364 nonprofits within the perimeter, 22,000 nationwide, and nobody is driving coordination at the state level in a way that we'd like to see it. So that resulted in creating the Georgia Warrior Alliance, which is not a nonprofit, it's a collaboration. We want every penny we raise to go to supporting men and women in uniform in need. People with physical and very severe mental disabilities, suicide here, and people with bringing families together at Callaway Gardens. To give you an idea of the need, there are 58 attempted suicides by veterans in the United States every day. 19 are successful. The divorce rate is 68% for 1 deployment, 81 for 2, 93 plus for 3 or more deployments. So families are being utterly destroyed and tremendous struggles with suicide. And so we want to what we wanted to do is first the camps, 1 a month at Callaway for families, half a dozen to a dozen here for people with injuries. And then the website, which will be an online resource guide, which is what Admiral Mullen requested, so they can see and rate nonprofits that are rated by military families who've used those nonprofits. They can see where the money's being spent, how long they've been in operation, what their services are. 24/7 counseling with the largest online counseling group in the world called Non-One. They're in 165 countries. They've been doing it for 25 years. It's now all online. Third, we are listing over 100,000 jobs in partnership with 28 corporations who've committed 100,000 jobs over the next 5 years. And Cisco has been the key partner for us in that, who's helping us integrate that effort. And then education, we're partnering with the Futures, which is the largest online certification for computing in the U.S., and also with the university system and the technical college system. And then finally, in revenue, so that we can support these families. We have had a $2.2 billion casino resort development in the Caribbean, who said they would like to give us 5% of their profits to sustain the enterprise. The Half Ironman in Augusta has sponsored the Georgia Warrior Alliance for the next 3 years, which is going to generate $250,000 to $300,000 a year. We also have gotten the rights through the only nonprofit partner for Xbox to do gaming, and I don't mean casino, I mean gaming, video gaming, and have national and international gaming tournaments, and the proceeds of that will support the Georgia Warrior Alliance. I want to make one other comment, and then I'm going to let our panelists get started. Thank you for your patience. I chair our state health board in Georgia, and I'm delighted that Bill Wallace is here this morning, who's on the board with me and keeps me in line. He's one of the brightest people and most disciplined people I've ever met in my life. Georgia returned $35 million of unmatched vocational funds last year and $27 million the year before. For every dollar we invest in job training for people with disabilities, whether it's state, corporate, or philanthropic, the federal government will give us $4. We have a $100 million cap. Georgia has returned $62 million of unmatched funds over the last 2 years, which went to New York, West Virginia, Massachusetts and Maryland. Is that right, Greg? And so part of our strategy at Warm Springs is to create vocational programs so that we train soldiers and equip them to transition from the military to the marketplace. One of the things we're in discussions with Greg about is doing a program with 100 homeless veterans in Columbus to rebuild the cottages here and train them in building. You'll hear about that. Retooling the golf course that was designed for people with disabilities here with Donald Ross. We've had one of the leading golf course designers in the world come in from Augusta National, who did all of Jack Nicklaus's courses for 17 years. We've got a project with blankets, $25 incubators. We've signed a contract and want to partner with, good morning, General Ellis, with companies in Africa. This is General Ellis, who is just an amazing hero of mine. He spoke on Thursday at Warm Springs, and he and Rigsby spoke to the troops Thursday evening. He is on our board. General Ellis had a spinal cord injury and spent a 6-month period learning to walk again, and just incredible inspiration to me and certainly to all the young men and women in uniform who he's had an opportunity to meet with, and he's had an incredible military career. He was G3 of the Army and ran Fort McPherson before his retirement, and has been an incredible advisor and mentor in our journey. I'm very grateful to him. I'll make this final comment. One of the most important things for these people in uniform is they join the service to serve. That's why they put on the uniform of the United States, and they want to continue to serve. So in my own therapy, when they handed me a crayon and asked me to write my ABCs, and when they asked me, I said, did I get a diaper for that, first of all? But it was very demeaning. And I said, I'll write a letter to somebody who lost a son or daughter in Iraq or Afghanistan. I'll write a letter to someone who had a child with a spinal cord injury, but I'm not going to write my ABCs. And they said, well, that's not on our list. I said, well, we'll go to the next thing on your list. And that really taught me that and I went and visited another wonderful place where they were spending 8 hours a day manufacturing door stops, welcome mats, and oven pads, which you can buy a better product at 1/10 the price for Walmart. These people, it's great that they're getting the physical training, and that was the idea for Embrace. There are 20 million babies born prematurely every year, 16 million have permanent disabilities, 4 million die. This is a $25 incubator that prevents that disability, which is illegal in the United States. We want to spend $22,000 on incubators. So we're doing it in Africa and India. But to give those guys, and men and women, the opportunity it's the same physical skill as manufacturing an oven pad, but now they get to help save hundreds of thousands of lives every year. So those are the kind of programs we want to implement here at Warm Springs to continue the legacy of Roosevelt and to link it with the legacy of Eisenhower in Augusta, where we have the nation's largest warrior transition battalion, active duty spinal cord injury population, and one of the largest burn centers in America. So we want to link the legacy of those two presidents. And finally, we're in discussions with a number of presidential families about doing living presidential memorials, where $500,000 goes to the bricks and mortar of a memorial, an eagle, or we're going to do a national architecture design contest. $2 million goes for vocational programs. That's why it's a living memorial. So with a 4-to-1 match, we want to invest $10 million in communities across Georgia. First at Warm Springs, then in Augusta, then in Savannah, then in Atlanta. So those are some of the things we're working on with the team here at Warm Springs, and I'll let these young students at Georgia Tech give you a lot more of the details and do a much better job than I can. So you guys fire right away.
Thank you.
Would you introduce yourselves?
Absolutely. Thank you for coming here this morning. Quickly introduce myself. My name is Chris Esposo. I'm the president of the Roosevelt Institute Campus Network Chapter at Georgia Tech. This is my vice president.
Hello, I'm Brian Coffey.
And this is my projects manager.
I'm at Coyle.
And I'm my other project manager.
I'm Casey Aultman.
You guys speak up a little bit, okay?
Absolutely.
There you go. Thank you. Do it again, Chris.
All right, so take two. So I'm the president of the GT Roosevelt chapter at Georgia Tech. And so what that is we're a member of the Roosevelt Institute Campus Network, which is a network of 80 chapters across the country with some 10,000 students endowed by the Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt Foundation in New York. So our organization as a whole at the high level is interested in engaging young people into the public policy discussion and debate and trying to affect change, which is what we're here doing today. Just to introduce myself again, I'm Chris Esposo, and this is my vice president.
I'm Brian Coffey, lovely to be here.
This is my project manager
Edward Coyle.
and my other project manager.
I'm Casey Aultman.
So we got involved with Ross a few months ago. He told us about this idea to bring rehabilitation to Warm Springs. And so we really thought that was a great idea and we wanted to add value. And so we had some discussions, and I had done some business plan competitions and public policy case competitions. So I had some idea on how to facilitate, research in this area. And we ultimately, I got together with a group at Cornell, a bunch of students, and we wrote up a program for a Warm Springs rehabilitation work to rehab to work program, where we would combine it with a vocational component. And so that's what we're going to be talking about here briefly today. We have a 30-some page report that anyone who's interested, we would welcome to take a look at, and it's a result of our research. Unfortunately, we can put everything we found in it. But today's presentation is just to give you a high-level overview of why it makes sense to put a vocational program here at Warm Springs. So as soon as the slide deck's ready, we'll start. So we call it honor, dignity, mobility. When you think about Georgia and we think about vocational programs, a lot of people might not really know why would somebody think that it would be really apt to put it in this state, and why it would be appropriate to have disabled veterans be participating in it. Well, the first thing I would like to point out is that a few months ago, General Stanley McChrystal spoke at the Yale School of Management. He said, well, some people could say we have a free market. Veterans coming home from the wars, they can't, get a job, then they, why should we help them? And he said two things. He said, one, it's the right thing to do, which I think we all agree with. I come from an Army family, so I definitely agree with that. The two is, if you ever want to fight a war again, if you ever want to engage in military combat again, you better treat the people that came from these wars right. We have an all-volunteer force, and it's a great thing. And so, even if you don't believe in the cold business calculus, as he called it, so he was speaking to his crowd there and management students, it makes sense for us to do so. So, it's really the economy, stupid. Why is relevant? And the fact is, the economy has changed since 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago. We have a new knowledge-based economy where knowledge is a commodity in itself. And this new knowledge-based economy has sort of spawned into a knowledge-based economy where the knowledge that is being developed is being utilized. Jobs increasingly are more dependent upon what you know, the skills you've learned in terms of software, understanding how to work with data, understanding how to communicate with a team. And these are all skills that veterans who are who may have disabilities from the wars, they should be perfectly competitive to engage in. Veterans have engaged in very intense, high information-centric occupations. They should certainly be competitive. This will give you a good landscape of the new emergent knowledge economy around the country. You see the usual suspects, Palo Alto, California, the Boston area near Harvard and MIT. You also notice Atlanta is one of them too, and it's growing. Atlanta has one of the highest rates, growing rates of new startup firms in the technology sector, especially Atlanta, being boosted by Georgia Tech. And this is a real great opportunity to try to marry some of that technology, both directly in terms of getting veterans opportunities with jobs, but also try to deploy some of that technology to help with the vocational component. So in this new knowledge-based economy, we were looking at what kind of examples can we show. And there were three. One is Amendia, which you'll hear about later on. The other, Cam Motion, I'm gonna talk about this for a moment, is it's an initiative started by the former, I think, Dean of Mechanical Engineering at Georgia Tech. And he was commissioned by DARPA to develop a textile method, an automated factory that could build textiles at the China and India price, to bring those industries back to America. And the kind of laborers that they will need for this sort of sector is not going to necessarily be labor intensive. It's going to be individuals who can use the software, who can organize the factory floor in such a way that they can, it's basically a mind job. The same thing with new key and manufacturing plant positions. They're mostly going to be jobs where you're basically doing a lot of data analysis. Again, these are jobs that barred from because of any physical issues. But of course, the sad truth is the statistics show that there's a 13% unemployment rate for veterans coming home from wars, and from, I believe, the age cohort of 19 to 24, it's 33%. So why is that? Well, the simple from our literature search, what we found was that veterans were not basically connected to the domestic labor economy, and that what we found and what people are finding in the literature and academics are finding is that informal and formal referral services has a lot to do with how you get a job. It's not necessarily going to a job board, but getting people you know who are already in these positions to recommend you. So obviously, if you've been in Iraq or Afghanistan for the past few years, your network of individuals, that's much lower than individuals who were here in country. So this is just to give you a good example. I'm trying to give a really high-level visualization of where we see Warm Springs coming in. So this is the labor life cycle of your typical employee. So I'm not going to make you do any calculus or anything. Don't worry, this is strictly for a visual. So basically, that curve represents to the company what your value is to the company. The horizontal is time, benefits to the firm is vertical. For simplicity, we made the cost constant. So that rectangle A, think of that as the first 2 years of your working life. For the first 2 years of your working life, you're not making any money for the company. You're screwing up. You know, you need to be trained. You need to be told constantly what to do. So they're taking you at a loss. From the point where it's above the cost curve, around B, that's when they really want you. They want you then because that's when you become increasingly productive, and then you reach a hump. And I'm not going to tell you what age that is, but at some age you reach a hump, and the companies want to kick you out. So where we see the vocational program adding value is to minimize that A as much as possible, to cut that A and to ensure and to make it more attractive for our veterans, because that A is less, to be deployed in the workplace. So how do we do that? Well, we have an aspirational vision. We think that we can use new online learning software, some of which are being developed at Georgia Tech by the Center for 21st Century Universities, initiative started by Richard DeMillo, the former computing dean. And basically, if you've ever heard of Khan Academy or MITx or any of these other initiatives, people are finding that people learn much better where you don't have, you can work at your own pace. And we think that not only this is a good way to deliver the information to our veterans in a potential program, but it's a way to cut costs. So we could provide that service and the facilities for the training to the companies, whoever would partner. Let's say that's Cisco or one of the other Fortune 500 companies that would partner with us, and we would cut that part of their gross cost from them. So we could at least get them that on campus. And so, this is really our vision, is that we have an integrated healing to work environment where the veterans can come here, they can have their families at Callaway, they have a holistic healing, but at the same time, they have access to learning technologies and softwares that allow them to become competitive, get their certifications, which will make them more competitive in the workplace and try to prevent any discontinuity between rehabilitation and their first job after service. So the current competitive landscape, we think, is very favorable. The VA's budget has increased 6% year over year. For vocational rehabilitation alone, it's a 10% year over year increase. There are 130, the potential population that this facility could service is 130,000 veterans. And again, there's 33% unemployment for 18 to 24 age cohort. So there's definitely a potential demand that we can capture with this facility if we can get the investments. We've done some research on whether or not this was the first of its kind, and from our survey, we could not find anything that was exactly what we were proposing. There's been other programs in the civilian sector. Dan Marino has a vocational training program for teens that he's releasing in 2014. There's our Ohio Recovery to Work program that was just started this past year, and that's aimed at alcohol and drug addicted individuals. But really something that's to our scope, aimed at veterans, it doesn't exist anywhere. So we would be the first mover in this sector, and we think that we would benefit from that as well. So where we would benefit from other vocational programs is that, unlike, let's say, civilian vocational programs, we know exactly who our demographic is. We know their problems. We know, and if we connect with the companies, we have a good idea of what the local labor market demand is. If we can get those two things settled, and this is again a graph of a sort of visualization of what makes a vocation program successful. If we can get those two things settled, we believe that we have a higher chance, and these two things we can control certainly based off of the talks we've had with Ross. We can increase the outcomes, that the chances that we'll have favorable outcomes, which is higher earnings, employment, and satisfaction from the veterans. So in summary, we think that this is a really worthwhile venture. We think that it's unique, that it is a project that needs to be done, that Georgia Tech has, and Georgia in general, has the capacity to house it. And if we marry it with the technology aspect, it has the potential to be groundbreaking, a groundbreaking program in the entire country. So if you want to know more about it, we have, again, a report that we've released, and we have some physical copies here on our findings, as well as some extensions that we think should be made to increase the chances of success. So that's it, and if anyone has any questions.
Where's the report? You have it on the web?
We don't have it on web yet, but we do have physical copies right here.
Are there any, and Greg, for you, they've done a differential equation that minimizes that A on the sine wave, so you're going to get all your problems solved. Yes, sir.
Yeah, this question can be directed to you, Ross, or to you all as well. The issue of what you're trying to do here is a national issue, and you've got National Guard members going on 2 and 3 deployments to Afghanistan, or formerly Iraq, now Afghanistan. And so the question I have is, has any thought been given to, once this program is successfully implemented in Georgia, to reaching out to other states or other regions? I mean, like, for example, maybe North and South Dakota collectively are not big enough to have a program like this, but that region of the country could perhaps support something that replicates what is being discussed right here in Georgia. And so if you all looked a little bit down the road to,
Yes.
reach out to other regions.
Yes, we have. This weekend, the Family and Warrior Support Team from the Joint Chiefs of Staff is here. They were at the orchestra event last evening. They visited Warm Springs and done one of the retreats with our Wounded Warriors here. They've dove in the aquarium with Scott Rigsby, Wounded Warriors. They're talking to us about the programs, that was Admiral Mullins, now it's General Dempsey, that are happening all over America. And that's where the concept of this came from. Bob Verhey, who's sitting right here, is doing something called the Veterans Innovation Center in Washington. He's traveled all around the country. I can tell you from a regional standpoint, in Florida, General Mixon, who's a lieutenant general who's here, who's going to be on our panels this afternoon. Dr. Sullivan, you've seen the panel list, I won't go through it, but General Mixon, Lieutenant General, is hosting one of our panels. He lives in Florida now, and he is talking with the governor and the leadership of the VA in Florida about replicating this program in Florida. We have the leadership down from North Carolina who's been implementing this program in North Carolina. I was told that there are 23,000 OIF veterans, Iraq and Afghanistan, in northern Atlanta. And I don't know if this is accurate, but before the state health board, we had a testimony. I find this hard to believe, but if you expand Georgia's borders by 400 miles in every direction, that's almost 30% of the troops that have been deployed over the last 5 years live in that geographic footprint. So we are right at the eye of the storm. So I think we have one of the largest veterans and active duty populations in America. So it definitely is the right place to start. Part of the reason for this weekend was to bring in leading nonprofits from all over America that are doing programs and have been doing programs for decades and invite them here, because our vision is to turn this 22,000 acres into one of the leading healing environments in America. And Greg can tell you, and I don't want to, but I think he's been in discussions with the Helen Keller Institute, I believe, with Jacob's Ladder and autism. I mean, we're talking to Eric Greitens, who's with the Mission Continues, who was the number 3 rated nonprofit in America last year. Dave Reaver's been doing camps for 35 years. These people were all talking to all those kind of nonprofits about setting up their national training center here at Warm Springs and at Callaway. So we're trying to bring the nation's leading nonprofits here to Georgia because we have that population. And we also are partnering and collaborating with them. And the website that we're developing, that's available free to any state group that wants it, that's credible. We're going to give it away. All the jobs, those are national jobs. We'll give it to any credible group. And we're, as I said, not a nonprofit. We're a collaboration of 12 nonprofits who are investing money to make this happen because we believe it needs to happen. But I hope I'm answering your question, John. But our idea is to take this 22,000 acres and our unique military population in Georgia and create the leading training center for nonprofits and healing environment for troops in the country.
Yeah,
Yes.
all I'm thinking is that once this has been established here,
Yeah,
then you could use this as a model.
That's right.
Go to the Pacific Northwest, or
Right.
somewhere up in the Northeast, or somewhere in the Midwest, and create similar centers patterned after what you've already
that's right.
successfully done.
That's exactly what we want to do. Greg?
I was just going to add, first of all, Chris, it was a great presentation. Congratulations. Thank you very much. I just wanted to add, most state vocational rehabilitation programs rely on state money to draw down this federal match that Ross referred to. In the case of our state of Georgia, we did send back $37 million this year, unmatched federal money. We sent back $25 million last year. What they have never done is done a capital venture model using private dollars to generate vocational rehabilitation outcomes. And to do this with a population of soldiers, I think is so groundbreaking. Now, if you think about our history here at Warm Springs, this was the place people came. It was the destination for polio. We're just taking the destination philosophy and moving this into the 21st century for the soldiers that need to be treated. So,
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg. And this is part of actually a 5-part model that I think the governor's bought into. I know we've been talking about for ages with the State Health Board. First is to partner with the military, because that's the right thing to do morally and ethically. And also it's our population. And then translational research. They get cuts in line on FDA approval in clinical trials. So when you're talking about health and innovation, the military has an aggregated population who will, and they're healthy. I mean, they're young people, you know, and they have the rest of their lives in front of them. They're used to discipline and hard work. It's the right population to transform healthcare in the areas of need, which are burns, neurotrauma, and orthopedic injuries. Third is venture philanthropy. I'm not even going to go into there too. U.S. billionaires are committed to give away $600 billion in their lifetime. $200 billion is going to healthcare. We need to create a brand for Georgia that symbolizes innovation in healthcare so that we take advantage of that philanthropy. We've got the global institutions, we've got the national institutions in health, and we have the military population, and we have the research. But we just need to bring it together and partner. And we're in discussions about creating a campus for global health and philanthropy. And I won't get it. But no other state has a former president, secretary of HHS, ambassador to the UN, speaker of the House, former surgeon general, and somebody like Bill Foege. And those people are not going to be around forever. But Bill Foege was the first director of the Gates Foundation that eliminated smallpox. He was the first director of the CDC and the first director of the Carter Center. We're in discussions with them about setting up a center of philanthropy and global health in this environment. So the first part, though, is partnering with the military. Sorry to be so long-winded. Are there any other questions? If not, we'll hop into our next presentation. Chris, that was outstanding. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. And I hope that was clear. We have three